3 sinister camping tales with unexplained horrors revealed. Prepare for spine-chilling nightmares. The Thompsons, the Garcias, and the Mitchells were ready for a weekend of fun in Maplewood, but the woods were thick with secrets. Laughter echoed through the trees as the families set up camp. The sun blazed overhead while marshmallows brown on sticks fizzled over the crackling fire. "This place is perfect," Sally Thompson declared, her smile wide, completely unaware of the shadows gathering around them. But as sunlight faded, the woods plunged into eerie darkness. Twisting shapes danced between the trees, and that's when the haunting started. A soft, distant whistling snaked through the air, so chilling it made Emma Thompson shiver. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her wide eyes darting around. Others laughed it off, but the laughter felt hollow, strained. "It's just the wind," Brad Garcia said, trying to reassure everyone. Still, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Before anyone could shake off the unease, strange symbols appeared on the trees, jagged lines that didn't belong. They huddled closer, eyes narrowing. "Where did these come from?" Jacob Mitchell asked, an edge in his voice. The fear simmered, bubbling beneath every grin and whispered joke. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As the night cloaked the camp in darkness, their dog Buster vanished into the maw of the underbrush. Panic seized the adults. "Buster!" they shouted, voices sharp with concern. What if a predator had caught him? Uncertainty gnawed at them as shadows deepened around the campfire glow. Suddenly the camp ranger appeared, his grin unsettling in the flickering light. "You kids should take care. The Whistler doesn't like outsiders." His voice warped around the words, twisting the air between them. Something about him felt off, but they brushed it aside. They were in the heart of nature, right? But the woods seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. The chilling wind picked up, rustling tense like they were alive, and the males shrunk back against nature's grip. The whistling grew more pronounced, echoing, reverberating, stalking them. Each breath grew heavier, hearts raced with desperation. As the clock strayed deeper into night, the woods erupted into chaos. Their tents rattled violently, sounds of unseen hands clawing at the flaps sending them into a frenzy. Emma hugged her knees, trembling as she glanced back into the trees where the darkness pooled like ink. "We need to leave by dawn!" Sarah Garcia cried, her voice cracking. But the woods seemed to conspire against them, whispering warnings no one dared to hear. The palpable fear crept up their spines. Just when it felt like they'd found a sliver of hope, the air shifted. A presence emerged, a twisted figure born from legends, eyes glimmering with secrets long buried. As dawn approached, the forest stood still, a deadly calm wrapped around them. Parents clutched their kids tightly, tremors vibrating through their bodies. They had to confront the darkness that hid within them, but not everyone would make it out. The question loomed over them. You could almost sense the woods laughing, waiting for the first thread of sunlight to shatter their fears and reveal a horrific truth about the Whistler. Would they escape, or had they awakened an ancient evil? The sun finally broke through the horizon, its pale light struggling to pierce the thick canopy of trees. Yet, the intensity of the night still clung to the air, an invisible weight suffocating their resolve. The families sat huddled, their eyes darting nervously between the trees, half expecting the Whistler to slip back into view. "Where's Buster?" Emma's voice trembled, each word a stark reminder of their missing dog. Anxiety gnawed at her insides, an unsettling pit that bled into her thoughts, blending confusion and dread. "We need to find him." Brad's tone turned urgent. He rose suddenly, the motion drawing the gaze of the others like magnetic pull. "I'm going into the woods." "Are you crazy?" Sally shot back, panic etched across her face. "What if you end up like him?" Jacob picked at the edges of the jagged symbols carved into the trees, his fingers shaking. "Maybe. Maybe these symbols are warnings. We shouldn't go out there. But the depth of silence surrounding them was more unsettling than the whistling had been. Every gust of wind sent leaves rustling, mimicking whispered words of caution. Then, as if the forest itself heard their dilemma, a distant bark sliced through the tension, followed by a low growl that vibrated through the trees. Energy surged among the families, a flicker of hope igniting the air. Was it Buster? "Stay here," Brad commanded, marching past shivering tent flaps. The others exchanged worried glances but followed, curiosity pushing fear aside. With each step into the woods, the shadows thickened, their protective cocoon of sunlight rapidly dissipating. The sense of being watched creeped back into their minds, a gaze not of the living, but something ancient. The further they walked, the more the wind whistled, its eerie tune woven with a menace that sent chills racing down their spines. "Buster!" Their voices rang out, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The forest hummed with disquietude, echoes of their calls lingering uncomfortably long. As they moved deeper, they stumbled upon a clearing, the sunlight barely managing to break through the jagged branches. It was here they discovered the remnants of a previous campfire, blackened stones and remnants of charred wood scattered like tokens of long-abandoned joy. "What happened here?" Jacob whispered, unease radiating from his voice as his eyes scanned the desolate space. Then, from the depths of the underbrush, Buster emerged, his fur matted and eyes wide with terror. He stumbled toward them as if trying to escape an invisible grip, whimpering softly in seeming surrender. "Buster!" Emma knelt down, reaching for him. But he paused, jerking back as if sensing something they couldn't. "Wait," Sarah warned, looking down into the dark woods. They all felt it then, a shift in the air, a heavy presence lurking. The whistling rose again, close now, laced with malice and beckoning them into the depths of shadows. Sally's heart raced as the familiar tune wrapped around her, pulling and twisting her thoughts. "Get back," she screamed as the figure stepped into the slant of sunlight, its hollow eyes fixed upon them. Suddenly, the symphony of the forest broke loose. Leaves rustled violently, the wind shrieked, and all sound twisted into a cacophony of terror. The families stumbled back, instinctively grabbing onto one another, their eyes wide, frozen in horror. What darkness had they unearthed? The whistler took a step forward, and they all knew they were not alone anymore. "Run!" Emma shouted, panic surging like wildfire. But as they turned to flee, the shadows shifted, and a dreadful realization swept over them. They wouldn't outrun the woods. As roots pulled at their feet, branches lashed out, dragging them back. The night still felt very much alive. It was clear now. Escape was not an option. But as the creature lunged after them, a chilling question hung in the air. Would they become another haunting tale? Or could they turn the tide against the evil gathering just beyond the trees? Branches whipped at their faces as they stumbled through the underbrush, the ground beneath their feet shifting and heaving like a living thing. Every heartbeat echoed in Sally's ears, drowning out the frantic whispers of the forest. Now, a menacing symphony. The shrieking woods held vengeance, the song of the whistler intertwining with their terror, a relentless pursuit. "Over there! The path!" Brad shouted, a glimmer of instinct cutting through the chaos. "We have to make it to the path." But the shadows closed in, blurring the lines of reality and imagination. It felt as if the trees themselves were leaning closer, straining to hear their breaths. Emma's hands gripped Buster's collar, pulling him with her as they veered left, desperate for an escape. But the animal's panicked whimpers echoed off the bark, deepening the sense of dread. Then, as if mocking their efforts, the whistling played again, more dissonant and haunting than before. It was a melody twisted with rage, turning hope into confusion. "Which way?" Jacob gasped, glancing back in horror as the creature's silhouette flickered between the trees, its form dark and formless, shifting like the shadows around it. "Just run!" Emma cried, sweat trickling down her spine as the adrenaline coursed through her veins, drowning out her fear with instinct. They ran, faces almost brushing with the rough bark of trees. She felt the pulse of life around them, trees almost seeming to encase them, each turn of the forest revealing more secrets, more darkness. "Buster!" she shouted, the dog barking fiercely. But in that moment of elation, he froze. The world around them halted. The ticking clock of time drew to an abrupt stop, as if nature itself held its breath. "Get him!" Brad yelled, scrambling to grab the terrified animal. But Buster stood still, eyes wide, staring into the night. A whimper escaped him, low and deep, a sound that vibrated into the very ground they stood upon. Emma's heart fell. She could see the dog was sensing something they could not comprehend. "Emma! No!" Sarah reached for her friend, but the shadows flickered, capturing their attention again. The whistler's whistling sliced through the air, and the shadows grew darker, swirling around them as if stirring a pot of evil. Closer and closer. "Look out!" Sally shouted as a branch lunged forward, smacking into Jacob's shoulder and sending him crashing to the ground. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding another swing that sliced through the air like a knife. "Help him!" Emma cried, ice in her veins. But fear had chained them in place. They fought against the invisible tendrils' reach out, wrapping around their ankles, their wrists, dragging them down. Panic surged as Emma sank deep into the mire of the forest floor, roots tugging her beneath the soil. "Hold on to something!" Brad yelled, grappling with a twisted branch, trying to pull Emma back into the light. Sally stumbled, heart pounding, her breath hitching in her chest. "We can't lose her!" she shouted, battling against the creeping shadows. But as they fought, a loud crack echoed. The ground splintered, sharp edges fracturing their escape route. An ominous laugh disjointed the whispers, a malevolent chuckle that seeped deep into their hearts. Then, all at once, the darkness seemed to pull back as if retreating into its realm. The clearing they had found was quiet once more, but the victorious glee of the whistler lingered. They found themselves standing at its edge, heartbeats racing, breaths shallow. "Did we escape?" Jacob whispered, his eyes darting to where the forests turned darker still. Buster, shaking and whimpering, turned toward the thicket with a low growl. Everyone followed his gaze, feeling the electric leash of fear binding them. As they stood there, the eerie whistling began anew, this time muffled and yet piercing, calling them back. Before they could react, they heard a voice, soft, beguiling, yet struck through with a chill that sent ice through their veins. "Have you come to play?" The woods echoed, and with it, the shadows danced in delight. "Run!" Emma screamed, her voice a desperate plea. But as the forest loomed ominously, a horrifying realization surged through each of them. What plays would the woods call them to? Would they provide the entertainment the whistler so craved, or become the next chapters in this gruesome tale? The clearing felt suffocating, the air thick with an oppressive weight. Shadows danced at the periphery of their vision, teasing them like phantoms whispering secrets only the trees knew. Emma's heart thundered, a primal rhythm that drowned out everything. As if on cue, the whistling returned, a haunting echo weaving through the woods, making their skin crawl. "Where do we go?" Jacob gasped, his voice trembling. His eyes darted from tree to tree, searching for salvation amidst the spectral gloom. "Back! We need to get back toward the old cabin," Brad shouted, his voice breaking under the strain of panic. He pointed toward the darkened path they had rushed from, though it felt like stepping into the mouth of a beast. "No! What if it's worse?" Sarah shrieked, gripping Emma's arm tight. "We can't go that way!" "Do we have a choice?" Brad hissed, urgency thickening the air. Emma felt the tug of war inside her. Fear was a gnashing beast at her belly. But fleeting flashes of their time together glittered through her mind. Laughter, camping under the stars, familiar smiles around the crackling fire. How could those memories hold any semblance of safety now, with the whistler shadowing their every breath? "Let's split up," Jacob suggested suddenly, his voice cracking. "Are you insane?" Sally's eyes flared wide. "This isn't a game." "Maybe we can confuse it," he replied, desperation spilling over. "If we spread out, it can't chase us all." "No!" Emma shouted, grasping for control. "If we lose each other, it'll pick us off one by one." The ground shook beneath them, and a rush of wind stirred the leaves into a frenzied dance, carrying a taunting melody that felt almost alive. The whistler was tempting them, inviting them back into the shadows, promising safety or doom, neither of which they could fathom. "Stay together," Emma implored, her voice wavering but firm. They retreated back toward the path, eyes wide and inbred caution dampened by raw terror. The whistling crescendoed, rhythm twisting into grotesque harmony, flowing like a dark river around them. The shadows seemed to tighten, pressing them in with palpable intent. "What does it want? What does it need?" Sally whimpered, now barely audible over the thrumming chant of the trees. "Food!" Brad's voice quivered with fear. "It wants our fear, our panic." As if summoned by the mere utterance of those dark thoughts, the shadows pressed in closer, elongated forms spilling from the thicket. Their dark edges were sharp and daunting, a forest of arms reaching toward them, grasping, clawing. "Keep moving!" Jacob yelled, taking charge as they stumbled back toward the path. But as they fled, a searing pain ripped through Emma's side. She gasped, glancing down to find a thorny vine coiling around her waist, dark tendrils tightening like a serpent. Panic roared to life as she stumbled backward, the group stopping short. "Emma!" Brad shouted, reaching for her, but for every inch she was freed, another vine lashed out, tearing at her clothing like a ravenous creature. "Let go, I can't," she choked, fighting the pull of the forest. Every heartbeat surged with a dread deeper than fear itself. She was being devoured by the woods. "Help her!" Jacob's voice dropped to a deathly whisper, his feet rooted in shock as if the very ground beneath him was conspiring in the horror. "Emma, hold on!" Sarah screamed, echoing the roots that seemed to encircle them, entwined as they were in the whistler's web. The shadows surged, enveloping them in an embrace that stung and burned. With a great, desperate lunge, Brad grasped the thorned vine, his fingers closing around it. "I won't let you go." His voice cracked as he pulled with every ounce of strength he had. But the forest groaned, a guttural sound that seemed to appreciate their struggle. The ground rippled beneath them, shifting and swallowing cries into the ancient soil. The whistling surged in a frenzy, a celebration of their unraveling. And then through the chaos came that soft, chilling voice again. "Will you play, sweet children?" As despair thickened the air and shadows laughed their malicious glee, the forest drew closer, and the fate of the group hung in precarious balance. Would they succumb to a game they didn't understand, or would they find a way to escape the sinister hold of the whistler? In that moment, Emma knew one thing. Playing wasn't an option, but it might be the only way to survive. But could they outsmart the darkness that had eyes everywhere? One wrong move, and they'd become part of the story woven by the woods. Emma felt the vines tighten around her, each constricting loop a reminder of the sinister force at play. She gasped for breath, her heart racing, the world around her blurring in and out of focus. The realization hit. This wasn't just a game, it was a trap, and they were the prey. "Pull harder," Sarah shouted, desperation flooding her voice. But the surrounding shadows seemed to close in, swallowing their words, absorbing the fear with palpable glee. "I can't," Emma cried, eyes wide with a primal mixture of terror and resolve. I can't stay here." The pain surged, ripping through her like wildfire, and she fought against the dark tendrils, every ounce of her strength focused on breaking free. "Emma, look at me." Brad's voice sliced through the chaos, grounding her momentarily. "You can do this. We're right here." But the moment she turned to him, another vine shot out, wrapping around her ankle, dragging her deeper into the shadows. The whistling turned sharper, almost mocking, a cruel jest amidst their struggle. Each breath felt like suctioning the last remnants of hope from her lungs. "Get to the trees," Jacob yelled. "The trees can't help you." But his voice trembled. The certainty of his command faltered under the weight of the dread pressing in around them. "No!" Sally screamed, hot tears streaming down her face as she lunged toward Emma, grasping her arm. But the shadows twisted, and for every lunge they made, the vines seemed to multiply, shifting and dancing in the dark, their movements unnervingly alive. "Sarah, help me!" Emma shouted as she felt her grip slip. Distant, haunting laughter slipped through the branches, echoing in a heartbeat of horror. With a fierce surge, she clawed at the vine, feeling the rough wood scrape against her skin, leaving raw streaks of flesh in its wake. "Focus, we need to focus," Sarah cried. "If we can make it to the ridge, we might find a way out." Gritting her teeth, Emma found a moment's clarity amidst the chaos. "Let's go, together." In a moment of primal synchronicity, they all surged forward toward the path that felt like a narrow lifeline. But every step made the vines writhe and twist, eager to pull them back. Suddenly, Sally's foot caught another vine. "No, no, get off me," she screamed, twisting, but falling back as the ground seemed to swallow her. The forest laughed, an awful, gleeful cacophony, each note mocking their desperation. "Keep moving," Jacob urged, chest heaving. They couldn't stop. If they did, it would be over. Emma could hear the whispers creeping back, sinister and close as darkness enveloped them. "Emma!" Brad called, reaching out, but she was falling behind. The grasp of the shadows held her like an iron vice, slithering over her body, a cruel embrace that pressed the breath from her lungs. Feeling herself being drawn back, she threw herself into the air, reaching for Brad's hand. Their hands met. "Hold on!" he shouted, and with a desperate yank, he pulled her forward, past the writhing darkness. For an instant the shadows recoiled, shrieking as they lost their prey. The winds howled through the trees, and for a heartbeat they paused, giving the friends just enough time to bolt forward. They ran, adrenaline coursing through their veins, fear anchoring every step. The haunting whistling faded, but the taste of horror lingered, the lingering touch of impending doom, like a shadow that wouldn't let go. Racing toward the ridge, exhaustion clawed at their limbs, yet they pressed on. Behind them, the cacophony of twisted laughter erupted anew, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. "What if we're not safe?" Sarah panted, eyes darting nervously behind her. But Emma kept moving, fueled by sheer determination. As they reached the top, the trees opened into a new clearing, moonlit and still. But Emma could feel it, a cold shiver, an ominous vibration in the air, telling her they were far from safe. "Look!" Jacob pointed, voice trembling. There in the moonlight something moved, shadows against shadows. A figure wavered, just at the edge of the clearing. "Is it?" Brad stammered, the word barely crossing his lips before the chilling whisper floated back to them. "Did you think I'd let you go?" It crooned, soft and sweet, unraveling into an echo that twisted deep in their souls. Emma's heart sank. The game wasn't over, it had merely begun. "Run!" Emma screamed, her voice rising as they turned to flee. But as they did, the ground shifted again, and the clearing warped under their feet. "Where do we go?" Jacob cried in desperation. As the darkness surged and the figure loomed closer, the group plunged into the unknown, where reality twisted and hope teetered perilously on the edge of despair. What awaited them further into the woods was still hidden in the dark, but one thing was clear. The Whistler was playing, and they were all just pieces on its twisted board. The forest swooped around them, shadows dancing like phantoms beneath the trees. The air crackled with malevolence as they pressed deeper into the unknown, hearts hammering and lungs labored. Emma could sense the danger swirling around them, as palpable as the dark tendrils that had sought to ensnare them moments ago. "Where's Sally?" Jacob gasped, glancing back. Panic flashed in his eyes as he took a step backward, but Emma gripped his arm. "No, we can't go back," she shouted. "We have to keep moving." The echoes of laughter grew louder, the glee of their tormentor filling the air like smoke. The moonlight struggled to pierce the dense branches, casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and coil, breathing and alive. Emma fought to rationalize the fear clawing at her throat. They could find a way out. They had to. "Look for a path, anything," she called, scanning the thick woodlands for an escape. As they stumbled forward, a gnarled root caught Emma's foot, sending her sprawling onto the cold, damp ground. Her breath hitched as she twisted around, frantic to push herself up. That's when she saw it, a small, ashen figure hovering just within the dark underbrush. Its face was pale and twisted in a horrific grin, eyes blacker than the night. "Look out!" Brad shouted, yanking Emma to her feet just as a vine lunged for her. It barely missed, striking the ground with a sharp thud. The figure dissipated into shadows as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a rancid scent of decay. "Did you see that?" Emma gasped, shaking. "Yeah, I did," Brad said, his voice barely above a whisper, the breath hitching in his throat. Sarah clutched her arms tightly, fighting against the chill that sunk deeper into her bones. "We need to go. Now!" They faced forward, pushing past thick ferns and twisted branches. The laughter was relentless now, reverberating in their ears, mocking their every attempt to flee. Each footfall felt heavy as terror gripped their hearts, adrenaline fueling a raw need for survival. "Go, faster!" Jacob hissed, his eyes wide and frantic, but it was as if the woods themselves conspired against them, the undergrowth thickening with each desperate sprint. Emma felt the shadows coiling tighter like a living thing, pulsating with hunger. They needed to break free, escape the grasping hands of the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. But where? "There!" Sarah shouted, pointing. A dim outline appeared in the distance, a gnarled tree, ancient and large, its branches twisted like bony fingers beckoning them closer. "Get to it!" Emma yelled, leading the charge. Hope flickered like a candle as they staggered toward the tree, desperation pushing them forward. As they neared, the ground shifted abruptly, and the shadows writhed beneath their feet, springing to life, holding them in place. "No! No!" Emma screamed as the earth trembled, the haunting laughter crescendoing into a wicked symphony. "We can't stop," Brad shouted, tugging at Emma's arm. And in that instant the tree revealed its true form, its bark shifting, eyes opening wide within the wood, looking directly at them, unblinking. "Run!" Emma screamed, her voice cracking, as fear tightened its grip. But the uproar of laughter morphed into something darker, a garbled chant echoing through the trees, drowning out their cries for help. Then came the whispers again, coiling in her mind like smoke. "Stay. Play. Forever." Time warped. The air grew heavy with dread. The landscape shifted, blurring, colors draining, becoming shades of gray and black, an endless void intent on trapping them. "Emma!" A voice slipped through. Was it Brad? "Don't let go." The urgency of his words clung to her as she felt herself slipping, the shadows laughing as they tightened and pulled hungrily. She spotted a flicker of light, a path illuminated just beyond the shadowy veil. "There, we can get to that," Emma shouted, forcing herself to focus through the rising panic. "Together," Jacob urged, and as their hands linked, they steeled themselves for one last attempt. Emerging from the darkness, a blinding light enveloped them, offering a tenuous glimpse of hope. But as they dashed toward it, the ground beneath their feet began to dissolve, and darkness surged behind them, relentless, eager to reclaim its prize. "Push!" Emma roared, the light growing closer, but as they hurtled forward, a shriek pierced the air, shrill and piercing, cutting through the shadows. Emma felt the ground tremble, and fear twisted within her as a chilling thought emerged. Something was coming for them. Were they truly free, or had the Whistler merely shifted its game? As the darkness whirled and howled at their backs, trapping their fears and regrets, the friends raced toward a fate they could not fathom. But the question lingered. What price would they pay to escape? The blinding light engulfed them, a sudden burst of brilliance contrasting the oppressive darkness they had just escaped. Heartbeats raced, pounding in their chests like drums, but instead of landing on solid ground, they felt an unnatural weightlessness, a moment suspended in time, caught between fear and hope. Emma blinked, squinting against the intensity. Where were they? The light seemed to morph, swirling around them like mist, revealing shifting shapes. It was like standing in the eye of a storm, swirling shadows illuminating strange creations just beyond sight. Is this it?" Jacob's voice trembled, echoing slightly as if they were in a vast chamber. "Where do we go now?" "I don't know," Emma replied, her pulse quickening again, dread washing over her. What if this was a trick? Suddenly, the light faded, pulling back like a curtain. They found themselves on a small, dilapidated path lined with twisted trees whose bark was black like soot. The sudden chill that enveloped them sent icy fingers crawling up their spines. Wisps of fog curled at their ankles, swirling like tiny spirits in the air. "Are we safe?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "We might be outside the forest." "Outside? I don't think so," Brad said, glancing around nervously. "This place feels even worse." The shadows lingered at the edges of their vision, reminding them that whatever force had pursued them was still close. Anxiety erupted in Emma's chest, a creeping realization that the Whistler hadn't merely set them free. It had lured them somewhere darker. "No!" Brad exclaimed suddenly, freezing mid-step. "Look!" Following his gaze, they saw it. There, amid the gnarled roots of a tree, lay a figure. Sally. Her friend was sprawled on the ground, lifeless, surrounded by mist swirling ominously as if mourning her absence. Emma's heart sunk into her stomach. She gasped. "Get away from her!" Emma shouted, moving towards Sally, instinct pushing her forward. But before she could reach her friend, something shifted in the fog, a presence that felt tangible and malicious. "Emma, wait!" Jacob grabbed her arm, his grip fierce. "It's a trap!" The fog thickened and began to swirl violently, forming dark shapes that twisted into grotesque silhouettes around them. They were no longer alone. Figures emerged, faces contorted, mouths twisted into horrific shrieks. Shadows of those who had fallen prey to the very forest they tried to escape. "Stay. Play forever," they whispered. Voices fused into a haunting chorus. Emma's breath hitched. Clawing back the urge to scream, she willed herself to think. "No, we can't stay here." The shadows lunged forward. Brad urged everyone to retreat. "Run!" he yelled, pulling Sarah away as Emma wavered. Suddenly the ground beneath them trembled violently, as if the very earth wanted to swallow them whole. The path began to crack, hairline fractures racing towards the tree like hungry serpents. "This way!" Jacob pointed frantically, darting down a fork in the path that appeared just as the shadows advanced. Emma raced to keep pace with the others, but the whispers surged louder, clawing at her mind. "You want her back, don't you?" They echoed, compelling her to turn back, to give in to the darkness. Was it even worth it? Was their survival built on the bones of those lost? "Stay together!" Emma shouted, her voice fighting the cacophony. It was a distraction, a desperate anchoring against the reality swirling around them. They dashed forward, adrenaline burning in their veins as they fled the darkness distorting behind them. But just as her courage swelled, the fissures in the ground began to widen, a chasm threatening to trap them in the void. "There, keep running!" she yelled, spotting another flicker of light up ahead, a pulsating glow breaking through the mist. Together, they surged towards it, but with each step Emma's heart sank deeper. What awaited them in that light? Was it salvation, or just another deception? The shadows stirred closer, clawing at the edges of their vision. With a final sprint, they leaped for the light, praying to escape the grasp of despair. As they neared, a piercing wail echoed behind them. Had the Whistler truly let them go, or were they merely stepping into a more sinister game? The light felt closer, but Emma's breath caught. A sudden shift, a presence looming in the shadows she couldn't ignore. What awaited them on the other side? The moment they burst into the light, everything shifted. They were no longer running, no longer in that suffocating darkness. The first thing Emma noticed was warmth. It enveloped her like a blanket, soothing the icy chill that had clawed at her skin. She breathed easier, glancing around, but relief quickly morphed into confusion. They stood in a clearing, vibrant foliage surrounding them, yet something felt deeply wrong. The colors were too vivid, the air too still. An unsettling silence replaced the chaos they had just escaped. Sarah's wide eyes darted from tree to tree, as if expecting something to leap out at her. "Where are we?" she whispered, trembling. "I don't know," Jacob replied, his brows furrowed. "But it feels off." Emma resisted the urge to explore the edges of the clearing. She could feel the unseen eyes of the forest gazing at them, watching their every move. Faint whispers brushed against her ears, words barely forming before vanishing like smoke. She resisted the urge to listen, terrified of what they might say. Is this a dream? Brad's voice trembled, almost lifeless. Just a trick of the light? But the sensation of reality was too potent. They were here, somehow free but at a cost. Emma remembered Sally, the suffocating fog, the swirling shadows that had threatened to consume them. We have to find a way out, she urged, her voice firm. We can't stay here. The others nodded, but uncertainty hung in the air like the oppressive humidity. As they started to move, the silence grew heavier. Each snap of a twig underfoot echoed ominously. The shadows cast by the trees stretched and intertwined, resembling reaching fingers. Emma's heart quickened. There was something lurking beyond those vibrant colors, a darkness waiting to pounce. A rustle in the bushes broke the stillness, and Emma's breath hitched. Something was out there. Her eyes sliced through the heavy foliage. Between the trees she thought she caught a glimpse, a flash of something pale and decayed, a skeletal hand retreating into the underbrush. There was sound now, a breath, or was it a sigh? It felt wrong, so wrong. Did you see that? Emma's voice trembled, and she took a daring step back. Anxiety knitted in her stomach. What? What did you see? Sarah leaned into her wide-eyed. A hand, Emma stammered, shaking her head. I think it was a hand. Stop it, Emma, you're just freaked out. Jacob pushed past her, his voice loud and tense, trying to uphold a facade of bravery. But it was clear everyone felt it. The weight of unseen eyes, the pulling sensation of something alive in the underbrush. This clearing had been a promise of safety, a trap crafted to ensnare them in a different form of horror. Let's keep moving, Brad suggested, though there was a tremor in his voice, a hint of fear fighting beneath the surface. They began walking again, but the forest closed in tighter with each step. Then that awful sound returned. A chorus of muffled cries began to rise from all around, anguished and desperate, mourning. Emma's mind raced with thoughts of Sally, the twisted faces they had encountered before. What are they saying? Sarah whimpered, her grip on Emma's arm tightening. Help us, came a voice sharp and cutting through the air, almost tangible. Help us, stay with us. Frantically, Jacob stopped, surveying the trees. Do you feel it? They want something from us. No, Emma shouted, steeling herself against the cries. We are not staying here. But the illusion of safety shattered as a dry laugh echoed from deep in the woods. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing down toward them. Shadows crept along the ground, inching forward with malicious intent. Run! Emma screamed, and they scrambled backward as shapes emerged from the foliage, figures warped and twisted, their mouths joining in the chant, eyes empty and dark. The clearing wasn't a refuge, it was a sinister stage for whatever had laid a trap. As they fled toward the trees, Emma glanced back one last time. The light flickered, dimming moment by moment, as the figures transcended the clearing. They were devouring hope, the once bright safety fading into despair. Keep going, Jacob shouted, urging them into the dense forest. What had they awoken in this cursed place? The deeper they plunged into the fray, the clearer the truth became. They were playing a much larger game than any of them could understand. Each step resonated with trepidation. What unseen horrors awaited them in the depths of the forest? With the sound of twisted laughter and cries echoing behind them, Emma realized this was only the beginning. How much longer could they run before the tree's secrets swallowed them whole? Branches whipped at their faces as they ran, the forest now a terrifying maze of shadows and horrors. Emma pushed harder, the panic driving her forward. The cries behind them morphed into a chorus, a sickly sweet harmony of misery that clawed at her mind. Don't look back, just keep moving, she shouted, her voice cracking, desperation spilling into every word. Jacob stumbled, catching himself with a wild flail of his arms. We can't run forever. We need a plan, he gasped, breathless. No plan will save us if we don't get away. Brad barked, urgency spilling from his lips. An eerie stillness reached out, the forest responding to their fear, breathing life into shadows. The air was thick, suffocating. Emma's heart raced, thumping furiously against her rib cage. The laughter from earlier echoed again, darting around like a whisper in the wind. She fought against the urge to scream, gritting her teeth as she felt the rough bark of trees scratching her arms. "Which way?" she shouted, searching each path that split before them like a forked tongue. "Hold on, we'll get out of this," Brad yelled, though his voice wavered. Every direction seemed to taunt them. The woods were a labyrinth with no escape, and every turn they took only led them deeper into the malevolence that surrounded them. Emma felt it, the eyes, the haunting gazes of the lost souls trapped in this forest, lingering just beyond their reach. Then, from behind the trees, more figures emerged, their movements jittery and unnatural, faces filled with anguish contorted into wide grins, wide enough to expose teeth that shimmered like bone. "Help us!" they all called out, their voices merging, creating a cacophony of desperation that sent shards of fear spiraling through Emma's heart. "Run!" The word shook from her throat as she pushed through the brush. But then Sarah's shriek sliced through the air, sharp and piercing. Emma whipped around to see Sarah standing frozen in place, eyes wide as saucers, her hand reaching out toward a looming figure ahead. "Sarah, get moving!" Emma scrambled back, but the ground beneath her seemed to pulse, holding her in place. The figure stepped closer, the forest darkening around them. It was tall, too tall, cloaked in shadows that dripped down like ink. Its face was obscured, a void hungrily absorbing light, yet Emma could feel its gaze boring into her, dissecting her soul. "Join us," it whispered, the sound slithering through the air. Emma felt her skin crawl, as the words wrapped around her like cold tendrils. Something deep inside begged for escape, urged her to run faster, yet fear chained her close. "Don't listen to it," Jacob yelled, shoving Sarah forward, breaking whatever hold the figure had on her. With one last terrified glance, Sarah turned and sprinted into the pitch black. Emma followed, adrenaline replacing the fear. Yet with every step, the laughter grew louder, cacophonous as though the very woods were mocking their effort to escape. Split-second visions of what might be chasing them raced through her mind. Gnarled hands, empty sockets, twisted faces. "Are we meant to be here?" Emma thought, but pushed the question aside. The thought of doom lurking just behind beckoned her to move faster. Branches clawed at her arms, an unwelcome reminder of her reality. She could hear the others behind her, their labored breathing mingling with the rustling sounds of darkness inching closer. They were navigating the underbrush, facing both visible and invisible threats. Abruptly, the ground shifted. Emma stumbled backward into Jacob, both of them crashing to the ground. The wind knocked out of them. Above, the trees seemed to lean in, conspiring together as if eager to trap them. "Get up!" Brad shouted, panic flashing in his eyes. They scrambled to their feet, but something held them. A low growl emanated from the thick cluster of trees ahead, a reminder of the lurking beast waiting to claim them. "Where did it go?" Jacob's voice trembled. The realization hit all at once. Those figures, they weren't just chasing. They were feeding off their fear. Suddenly, Sarah froze again, her expression warped with horror. "It's—" A piercing scream erupted from her lips as her body jerked backward, ripped by something unseen but palpably there. Emma reached out, but a fog rolled in, thick and blinding. "Run!" Emma screamed again, but it felt hopeless, like screaming into a void. And then the ground cracked beneath them, a sudden uproar of chaos engulfing them. They were not just fleeing. They were part of something ancient, something hungry that would not easily let them go. As they plunged deeper, what awaited them sprung from the darkness. Something far worse than they could imagine lurked ahead, its true nature hidden, waiting to reveal itself in the coming dread. What twist in fate had led them here? And who would be the first to pay the price? They stumbled through the fetid wilderness, shadows weaving around them as if deciding who to torment next. Emma fought to keep her breath steady, every inhale coming quicker than the last, fear gnawing at her very being. Each footfall echoed with a palpable ache, the fear growing heavier around her. "Where's Sarah?" she gasped, scanning the darkness. They had looked away for one moment, and now it felt like eternity. Jacob's face twisted with panic. "I thought she was right behind us." "We can't stop," Brad shouted, pulling at their arms. "We have to keep moving." Yet, as they fled, the sounds of the forest twisted into something vile, a chorus of low growls and profoundly unsettling whispers. It felt as if the trees themselves watched, their gnarled branches beckoning. The hunters, long lost in their own dark stories, had been awakened. Emma's heart raced with every step, and the urgency to escape burned in her lungs. But where? The thicket ahead seemed impenetrable, darkness thickening like fog, inviting them into its womb. A shiver ran through her as she recalled the torment and the laughter that had chased them from the edge of hell. "Look!" Jacob shouted. There, just ahead, a flicker of light shone through the murkiness. "We need to get to that." But before they could reach it, the woods shifted. A dark shape lunged from the shadows, clawing at them. "Get down!" Emma shrieked, tugging Jacob, who barely managed to evade a jagged branch that swung toward him. I can't breathe," he gasped. "Focus!" Brad urged, his voice gritty with panic. "Keep moving!" Emma's arms screamed for rest, but they had no time. Darkness coiled around them. It was a living thing, reaching out with thousands of tendrils, beckoning, wrapping tighter each moment they hesitated. In a heartbeat, fear morphed into sheer survival instinct. Emma launched forward, shoving aside the branches that threatened to entangle them. "Don't look back," she yelled, pushing her legs to sprint harder. If they could just reach the light, maybe this nightmare would end. As they clawed their way through the last stretch of brush, they burst into a space illuminated by moonlight, a sacred circle bathed in soft silver light. Panting heavily, they dropped to the ground. "Is this it?" Jacob whispered. Hope flickered in their eyes, though shadows danced at the edge of their vision. But before they could breathe easy, an ominous rustle echoed. The light dimmed suddenly, and with it the air turned thick and cloying, like stepping into murky water. A shadow morphed into form just outside the circle, no longer chasing them but watching, pulling them back into the narrative it chose. Emma's heart dropped. "We have to act. We can't just stand here." But as if responding to her fear, the shape shifted closer, the very ground trembling as it stepped forward. "You can't escape. You have played my game, and now you belong to me." The voice reverberated, haunting, twisting around them, each word heavy with threat. The whispers of the lost souls mingled, crying out, and Emma turned, grabbing onto Jacob and Brad. They had to hold on to each other, or they'd be swept away in the horror of it all. "Fight it!" Emma screamed. "Fight it! We're not playing anymore." Together they formed a chain of defiance, digging deep. "What do you want from us?" Brad shouted at the figure, his voice catching in his throat. "Fear is what binds you. Fear is my feast," it roared, and as it did, darkness surged, swallowing their makeshift haven. The figures of the lost twisted about them, mere shadows on the edge of sanity. "Stay together," Jacob shouted, waking a spark of determination deep within Emma. Suddenly fear turned to anger, a red-hot surge she hadn't anticipated. "You can't have us," she screamed. "We're not afraid anymore." The air crackled with energy, the shadows recoiling from her voice, reluctant and wavering. Their collective fear simmered beneath the surface, morphing into a palpable force that seemed even the darkness could not withstand. And in that moment of pure defiance, the oppressive hold of despair began to lift. Emma dug her heels into the ground, feeling the weight of her friends, the solidity of their bond. They weren't alone in this fight. "It's not just fear that fuels this," she shouted again, and echoing her words, Brad and Jacob joined in. "Hope, love, togetherness." With every chant, the darkness shrieked, twisting under their intensity, searching for a way to break free from this newfound light. The light grew brighter, fierce, and consuming. The figure began to flicker, unraveling beneath the power of their unity. Finally, with a deafening roar, the veil of darkness shattered. Tendrils of shadow exploded in every direction as the souls clung together, each one finding peace, released from the chains that had bound them. "We're free!" Emma gasped, feeling warmth washing over them. The forest began to fade, transforming into a glimmering ethereal landscape brushed with golden hues. The oppressive weight lifted, leaving behind only the echo of their fears. But even as they stumbled forward, breath ragged and heart still pounding, shadows lingered at the edge of their vision, remnants of a game best forgotten, "We need to find a way back home," Jacob said as the warmth enveloped them, though in his tone lingered uncertainty. And with one last glance behind them, Emma nodded, knowing they must not let fear creep back again. Together they could face anything, and that was the real power in the end. "Together," Emma whispered, "always together." The path opened before them, bright and filled with promise. This time they would navigate their journey with even more strength. As they moved into the unknown, a quiet resolve settled within her. They had conquered something sinister within these woods, but the whispers reminded her that every ending carried a story. One day, they would become the story worth sharing, legends illuminated by the very light they'd fostered together. The world stretched before them, untouched and waiting. And finally, back in the heart of the woods, silence fell, a lullaby for the darkness that would forever endure. Now that the story has reached its conclusion, there's something you must do. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that will chill you to your core. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and let me know you're with us on this journey. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about the story you just experienced. I can't wait to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Only true fans understand how vital it is to support the channel through your actions. Your energy keeps these stories coming.